Hello everyone. In this video, we'll discuss about the shock. Then we'll be discussing the various types of the shock and we'll take each and every type in details. So what is shock? Shock is basically the systemic state of the body in which there is no adequate tissue perfusion. So the body is failed to maintain the adequate tissue perfusion, and that's the reason the cells are not able to get the enough oxygen to keep on their metabolic demands. So what happens? Cells start doing the anaerobic respiration where it is possible. So what is shock? Shock is a systemic state of low tissue perfusion which is inadequate for the normal respiration of the cell, and this shock is the most common cause of death among surgical patients. Now the features of shock. What are the general features of shock? As we know, in shock what is going to happen? There will be low tissue perfusion. Why that is there? Because failure of the heart, or maybe it may be one of the reasons because cardiac output may be compromised. That's why the tissues are not getting the good perfusion. So basically, if you are not perfusing the tissue well with the blood, they will not be able to meet their respiratory requirements of the oxygen, and then they have to shift to the anaerobic metabolism. So as we know, the anaerobic metabolism results in the lactic acidosis, right? There will be more lactic acid production in the anaerobic mode of respiration, and that can result in the metabolic acidosis. So anaerobic metabolism, because we are not able to provide the oxygen to the cells, and that will result in the formation of lactic acid, and that ultimately result in the metabolic acidosis. So the first feature is anaerobic metabolism leads to metabolic acidosis. The second thing, there will be edema. Why there will be edema? Due to the endothelial leak. Okay, in cases of shock, there is endothelial leak which can result in the edema also. Now the preload and afterload in the state of shock are decreased, and that's why the BP falls. Now when the BP falls, there are certain baroreceptors like aortic arch and the aortic sinus. So these are the baroreceptors. They will gauge the decrease in blood pressure, and in the response to those baroreceptors, they will increase the sympathetic activity and lead to the increased heart rate and will constrict the vessels. So baroreceptors will sense the decreasing BP, and in response to that, tachycardia as well as vasoconstriction can occur in the shock. Then we'll see the increased respiratory rate and minute ventilation, and this is to excrete the excess carbon dioxide. Of course, that is good only because the oxygen demand is more inside the body, so we have to go for more increased respiratory rate. Now decreased perfusion result in decreased urine output also, and this is one of the important feature of the shock, that in the shock the output of the urine is compromised. Then the activation of renin-angiotensin system and the vasopressin, that is the antidiuretic hormone, is released, leading to the further vasoconstriction and reabsorption of water. Why it's happening? Because RAS mechanism, when it will be taken when the amount of fluid is less in the body, right? Urine output is less, so we have to conserve the fluid. For conserving the fluid, vasoconstriction and reabsorption of water are the mechanisms to conserve that fluid. Now cortisol is also released, resulting in further retention of the sodium and water. So that will be further taking up the sodium and water due to the effect of the cortisol. So the body will be taking up the sodium, and with sodium, water always comes back. Now let's see the various classification of the shock. The shock can be hypovolemic, as the name indicates. Hypo means less, volemic means volume of blood has become less, or volume of fluid has become less. Then cardiogenic, there is some problem with the cardiac tissue, that is the heart, and that's why the heart is not able to maintain the cardiac output, and that is leading to the shock state. Obstructive, because of the obstruction the tissue are not getting perfused. Then distributive and the endocrine cause. So all these causes will be discussing in detail. So starting with the hypovolemic shock, as we know, we can have two varieties of the hypovolemic shock, hemorrhagic or non-hemorrhagic. What does that mean? Hypovolemic, as we have already discussed, hypo means less, volemic means volume. So less volume of the fluid or less volume of the blood inside the venous system or the vascular system. So it can be due to the hemorrhage, if there is any trauma or something and a lot of blood has been lost, that is known as the hemorrhagic shock. And another can be non-hemorrhagic. So what comes in the non-hemorrhagic? There is fluid loss due to other reasons than the hemorrhage, direct hemorrhage. So what can be those causes? Non-hemorrhagic causes can be the dehydration, vomiting, diarrhea. Diabetic patient, in the diabetic ketoacidosis there is very much loss of fluid, then evaporation, and the third space loss. So when there is, what is third space loss? When there is very severe cases of the peptic ulcer, so a lot of blood is lost through the peptic ulcer in the third space. So third space loss into the GIT or interstitial spaces, as in bowel obstruction or pancreatitis. So again, it is very important that the pancreatitis and bowel obstruction can be considered as the non-hemorrhagic cause of the hypovolemic shock. So this can be asked in the exams also. Now, most common form of the shock is the hypovolemic shock. Again, very important questions for the exam, that they ask which of the following is the most common form of the shock, and the answer to that is hypovolemic shock. So in hemorrhagic shock, what is the sign? The jugular venous pressure is low in it due to the loss of blood. So there is less amount of the blood inside the vascular system or inside the vessels, inside the veins, inside the arteries also. So since less blood is there in vein, and that's why its level will be low. That's why it is an indication of the hemorrhagic shock that JVP is low. Now let's see the cardiogenic shock. In cardiogenic shock, as the name itself indicates, that cardio, that is the responsible organ for the shock, is heart, and genic is generated by the deficiency of functioning of the heart. So the cardiogenic shock is basically the state of hypotension or hypoperfusion as a result of low cardiac output. So this can be the most simplest definition, that due to the low cardiac output, there is a state of hypotension, decrease in BP, as well as there is decrease in perfusion to the tissues where we have to supply the oxygen. So what are the causes of this cardiogenic shock? The myocardial infarction, cardiac dysrhythmias, valvular heart disease, blunt myocardial injuries, cardiomyopathy, and decreased preload due to the cardiac tamponade, tension pneumothorax, massive pulmonary air embolism. So all these are the causes for the cardiogenic shock, and mostly the myocardial infarction is the most common cause for the cardiogenic shock. Now, we should know one thing, there is almost always increased filling pressure of the left ventricle, or sometimes also of the right ventricle, or the combination of both also. So always there is increased filling pressure, at least in the left ventricle, on the left chamber of the heart, and that's the reason when you see the JVP is usually raised in cardiogenic shock, and that again is a determining factor. You can see this is a sign of cardiogenic shock due to increase in the pressure of the chamber on the left side. Sometimes on the right side also there is increased pressure, or sometimes on the both side also there is increased pressure, but JVP is increased because of high filling pressure, elevating filling pressure. Now the distributive shock, as we know, the distributive shock includes the anaphylactic shock, septic shock, and the spinal cord injury, that means the neurogenic shock. So all these shock, the anaphylactic, septic, and neurogenic shock, comes in the category of the distributive shock. One thing I must tell you before proceeding with the shock, for each shock, generally, every type of shock, generally there are two parameters to discuss about the shock. One, there can be changes in the cardiac output, and another, there can be changes in the peripheral resistance, which further later will be affecting the changes in BP. So here there will be inadequate organ perfusion, and this is associated in distributive shock, it is associated with vascular dilation, that means decrease in the peripheral resistance, right? And that will lead to the hypotension, low systemic vascular resistance. So as I have already discussed, the peripheral resistance has become low, and that's the reason the vessels are dilated and there is hypotension. Inadequate after rho will be there since the tension is not being maintained, right? So there won't be much after load, and as a result, abnormally high cardiac outputs. Now this is strange that in the distributive shock we are going to have high cardiac output which is abnormal, but it will be the case. So again, remember this, in the distributive shock there will be abnormally high cardiac output. Now in case of anaphylaxis, which is considered as the type of hypersensitivity, and it is a life threatening type of hypersensitivity, and in this we see the release of lot of amount of histamine. So there will be excess histamine release, and that will be leading to the vascular dilation. So vasodilation will be there, there will be decrease in the vascular resistance, and that will lead to the shock. There is that means that will lead to decreased perfusion to the tissues. Then for the neurologic shock, we know that the sympathetic nerves are going to handle the vessels, right? So vasoconstriction and vasodilation are a function of the sympathetic nerve, they control. So sympathetic nerve, if they are stimulated, the sympathetic system will be causing vasoconstriction. Now if we cut the sympathetic nerve or if we traumatize the sympathetic nerve, of course the vasoconstriction function of the sympathetic nerve will be compromised, and that will lead to increase, that is the increase in the vasodilation, increase in the size of the vessels, and hence that will decrease the peripheral resistance. So neurogenic shock is caused by traumatic or pharmacological blockage of the sympathetic nervous system. So anyhow you are blocking the sympathetic nervous system, that will be leading to the dilation of resistant arterioles and capacitance vein, leading to hypovolemia and the hypotension. So basically neurogenic shock will affect the function of the sympathetic nervous system, that in turn will affect the peripheral resistance, and that will be decreasing the peripheral resistance, leading to the vasodilation also. Now in neurogenic shock, because of loss of vascular tone, you don't have the right vascular tone, now the vessels are dilated, so jugular venous pressure has to fall because it will be dilated and there will be dilation, that means there will be less pressure and the level will fall. So again it is very important, JVP will fall in distributive shock and the cardiac output is abnormally high in distributive shock. Then we have the endocrine shock. Now this endocrine shock is a mixture of all the three types of the shock which we have read. So it is a mixture of hypovolemic, cardiogenic and the distributive shock. So the causes of the endocrine shock comes from the, of course, endocrine hormone relating organs. So what are those? Hypo and hyperthyroidism as well as the adrenal insufficiency can lead to endocrine shock. Now let's discuss certain characteristics of the shocks. So starting with the cardiac output, as we know the cardiac output is generally low in the hypovolemia case, cardiogenic case and obstructive case, but it is abnormally high in the distributive type of the shock. So this we have recently read, so this should be clear. Now coming to the vascular resistance. Now the peripheral resistance is high in the hypovolemic shock. Why it is high? Because of the low blood pressure. Whatever the baroreceptors are there, the carotid sinus and all, they will be sending the stimulus and they will lead to tachycardia and lead to the sympathetic stimulation that will cause the vasoconstriction, and that will lead to increase in vascular resistance. Same way cardiogenic will have the high vascular resistance, obstructive also will have the high vascular resistance, but due to a lot of amount of the histamine or other chemicals in the distributive type of shock, or due to the loss of tonicity of the sympathetic stimulation of the vessels, the vascular resistance will be low, and that's the reason you will see a fall in the JVP also. Now coming to the venous pressure. Now the venous pressure in hypovolemia it will be low. That's why if venous pressure is low, venous return is low, and that's why cardiac output is also low. But in the cardiogenic shock, as we know, there is high filling pressure, right? In the left chamber there is high filling pressure, and due to that we have the increase in JVP also, and that's the reason this is considered as high. Venous pressure is considered high in the cardiogenic or obstructive also, because in there in the obstructive one there is obstruction of the vessels, and that will lead to build up of the pressure. Now in the distributive shock there will be vasodilation, there will be decreased vascular resistance also, so the venous pressure should be low. Now the mixed venous saturation, that is low for all the three, but the mixed venous saturation will be high for the distributive type of shock. Now the base deficit for all these, base deficit for all the type of shock has to be high. So these are the various parameters which can be asked in exam, and we have to be clear with this chart. Now we have another classification based on the severity of the shock. The one is the compensated shock, and the another one is the decompensated shock. So what are compensated shock? Actually, before I go with the compensated shock, I should tell you there are certain organs in our body that requires constant blood flow, and our body has to maintain the blood flow to those organs. So what are those organs? These are the kidney, lungs and brain. They require the constant blood flow. We cannot compromise with the blood supply to these organs. So what our body do, if there is any case of shock, if there is any state of shock, then the body will try to shift the blood supply from less important organs, like reducing the perfusion to skin, muscles and GIT, and this blood is shifted to the kidney, lungs and brain. Now this is known as the compensation. The body tried to compensate the problem, right? The state of the shock has been compensated, and we have compensated this by shifting the blood flow from less important organs to the organs which require a lot more oxygen supply or a lot more constant blood flow. So in compensated shock, there is adequate response to maintain the blood flow to kidney, lungs and brain, apart from tachycardia and cold peripheries. Okay, the periphery, the skin will be cold and there will be increase in heart rate, and rest there won't be any sign in case of hypovolemia, right? So you won't be able to find any other clinical sign of hypovolemia in body except tachycardia, that is increase in heart rate, and the cold peripheries. Now this state means, so where this blood comes from? This blood comes from reducing the perfusion to skin, muscles and gastrointestinal tract, that is GIT. So the blood supply is refused to these areas, and that is shifted to the kidney, lung and brain. I am repeating this again and again so that you can remember the most important thing, the most important organ which have to be supplied in the case of compensated shock also. Now we have the decompensated shock. So in the decompensated shock, the compensatory mechanisms are overwhelmed and the hypotension and the increased lactic acidosis result, and that progresses towards the failure of the supply to the organ. So that can lead to the organ dysfunction. So the progressive renal, respiratory and cardiovascular decompensation may result in the decompensated shock. So in general, if 15% of the bone volume is compensated, okay, if 15% of blood volume is lost, then it is compensated, and if blood pressure is maintained and falls after 30 to 40% of the circulating volume, and that has been lost, then there are chances of getting the decompensated shock. So till 15% of the blood volume is lost, then compensation can manage it. But if it falls above the 30 to 40% of the total circulating volume, then it is very difficult and the decompensation results. So this can be further mild, moderate and severe type that we'll be discussing now. Now there are certain parameters on which we'll discuss about the various features of the compensated, mild, moderate and severe types of decompensated shock. So the first one is the compensated. In this column we have the compensated one, then we have the mild, moderate and severe types of the decompensated, right? So lactic acidosis, as we have already read that lactic acidosis is there in the shock state. Why it is there? Because of increase anaerobic respiration, lack of supply to the oxygen supply to the cells, and hence they start doing the anaerobic respiration, leading to production of lactic acidosis. If it is mild decompensated, then it will little increase lactic acidosis. Moderate also it will be increased, and in severe it will be very high. The lactic acidosis will be very high. Then we know due to the low perfusion, the urine output will decrease. So in compensated, it is almost normal. In mild also it is normal, but in moderate decompensated shock, it becomes reduced, and in severe, the patient becomes anuric. Now the level of consciousness, it is normal in the compensated. It is also normal in the mild decompensated, but mild anxiety can be seen. Drowsy in the moderate form, and in the severe decompensated shock, the patient is comatose. Now coming to the respiratory rate, compensated it is normal. Why compensated everything is normal? Because body has compensated everything. That's why all the things are coming normal, right? Now in the decompensated, the respiratory rate will increase in order to throw out the carbon dioxide that is being produced in the body. Then the moderate one also it is increased, and in severe decompensated it is very hard to breathe. The labored breathing can be seen. Now the pulse rate, it might increase mildly, then increased in mild, increased in moderate, and increased in severe. Coming to the blood pressure, compensated mechanism has made the blood pressure normal. In mild also, mild decompensated also it can be normal. Mild hypertension can be seen, hypotension sorry, can be seen in the moderate one, and severe hypotension is observed in the severe decompensated form of the shock. So these are the various comparisons of various characteristics or various metabolic parameters which are seen in the body in different forms of shock. Now the complications of shock. So the shock can result in the multiple organ failure. What is multiple organ failure? When the failure of two or more organ system is observed, that is known as multiple organ failure. So they, in relation to lung, there can be acute respiratory distress. In relation to kidney, there can be acute renal insufficiency, liver, acute liver insufficiency. In relation to clotting, there will be coagulopathy. As the decompensation increases, there are more chances of DIC, and the coagulative nature of the blood also increases. Then we have the cardiac. Now in this, we can have the cardiovascular failure. So these are the various complications of shock which can result in the multiple organ failure. Now let's discuss certain mellitus facts which are important for exam point of view. Now there is hypovolemic shock, or there is any type of shock, we would need to provide fluid therapy. So now this fluid therapy, there can be two types of fluid. One is the crystalloid fluid and another is the colloidal fluid. Now the crystalloid fluid includes Ringer's lactate, that is RL, we call it RL. Then we have the Hartmann's solution and the normal saline, that is NS. For the colloids, we have albumin and commercially available product which are there as the colloids can be used. Now there is no ideal field for the resuscitation, and most importantly, they both, the crystalloid as well as the colloid, are having zero oxygen carrying capacity. Now this is a disadvantage of these fluid because they are not having any oxygen carrying capacity like blood. So if blood is being lost, the ideal fluid for the replacement is blood. But if waiting time is there, you can't find the blood donor, you can't find the exact matching blood, or you have to test the blood group and all, till then you can go with the crystalloids like Ringer's lactate, Hartmann solution, and the normal saline. Now there is another treatment option, that is the vasopressor and inotropic support. Now this vasopressor and inotropic, what is this? This is basically going to do the vasoconstriction, and that's why we can't use it in hypovolemic shock. Why? Because in hypovolemic shock, we have already lost the blood. The problem is not the vasodilation of the body or vasoconstriction of the body, but the problem is basically the loss of blood. We have less volume of blood inside the body, and we know there is reflex vasoconstriction also. in the hypovolemic shock. So it is not indicated, these drugs are not indicated for the hypovolemic shock. But drugs like phenylephrine, noradrenaline are used in distributive type of shock. Remember what is distributive type of shock? That includes the anaphylaxis, the neurogenic injuries and all, and that's where we find the use, because we have seen in there also that there is immense vasodilation due to the release of the histamine, due to loss of the sympathetic tone, all that there is increase in the diameter of the vessels, and we can use these drugs to cause to treat vasodilation and to cause vasoconstriction. So they can effectively be used as the vasoconstrictor, and we can use these drugs for the neurological types of shock and the anaphylactic types of shocks. So if the vasodilation is resistant, then we can add the vasopressin. Now the parameters which we have to monitor while monitoring the shock. So the urine output is the best monitor, as we know that in the compensated shock there is no loss of the urine output, but as the shock becomes decompensated and it becomes mild, moderate and severe, then the urine output decreases, and in the severe form it becomes anuric also. So we have to monitor the urine output, and this is considered as the best monitor for the shock. So this can be a potential question for your exam, that the best monitor for the shock is urine output. Then we can of course check the level of the consciousness. The patient becomes more anxious, dizzy, and later can be the comatose. So we can check the level of the consciousness to know the stage. Then the ECG and oxygen saturation. Oxygen saturation, why? We are already knowing, because we have been talking about it since morning only. What we are doing? Oxygen saturation is falling. That's why we are not able to provide adequate amount of supply to the tissues, right? So the oxygen saturation we have to monitor. Now the only clinical indicators of perfusion of the GIT and muscular beds are the measures of lactic acidosis. So if there is increased lactic acidosis, then there are chances that GIT and muscular beds are not getting enough oxygen. That's why they have shifted to the anaerobic mechanism, and the lactic acid is the byproduct of the final product of the anaerobic respiration only. So lactic and base deficit we have to monitor, and mixed venous oxygen saturation also we can monitor to find the perfusion of GIT and muscular beds. Now what is this mixed venous oxygen saturation, which is a good indicator of this shock? So this mixed venous oxygen saturation is basically the percentage of the saturation of the oxygen that is coming back to heart from the body through the veins. So basically the heart supplies the oxygenated blood to the tissues throughout in the whole body, and then the rest of the blood comes back to the left chamber of the heart, and when it comes it will be deoxygenated. So basically what amount of fraction or what fraction of the oxygen has been taken by the tissue of the body, it is indicated by mixed venous oxygen saturation. So when venous means inside the vein, and vein are coming to the left heart, right? So whatever oxygen saturation is there when it is coming to the left chamber of the heart, that is known as the mixed venous oxygen saturation. So suppose from the right heart it was 100% the saturation, and when it comes back to the left chamber of the heart, then it will be 50 to 70% normally. So that percentage saturation of oxygen returning back to heart from body is a measure of oxygen delivery and extraction by tissue. Now what is the normal mixed venous oxygen saturation? Generally it is between 50 to 70%. So if it is less than 50, then there are chances the body is taking and extracting more and more oxygen, and if it is more than 70, that means the body is not able to utilize the oxygen, right? So if the level is below 50%, that will indicate inadequate oxygen delivery and increased oxygen consumption by cells, and this situation is seen in cardiogenic shock and hypovolemic shock, when there is no problem with the hemoglobin, no problem with the peripheral system, just the problem is in the heart, in the cardiac output as well as the volume of the blood. Now high mixed venous oxygen saturation, that is more than 70%, is seen in the cases of sepsis and other forms of distributive shock. So less oxygen is delivered to cell and cell cannot utilize what little oxygen is given, and hence venous blood has higher oxygen concentration. That simply indicates that if it is more than 70%, the earlier 30% was being delivered to tissue, but now tissues are not able to take that 30% also, because they are not able to utilize the oxygen, and that's why it has a high mixed venous oxygen saturation. So by knowing the mixed venous oxygen saturation, whether it is lower than the normal values or higher than the normal values, we will be able to find out the type of shock. For the distributive shock, it will be high. For the cardiogenic and hypovolemic shock, it will be lower than the normal values.